Welcome to the Matawan Aberdeen School District's Committee of the Whole meeting on November 14th, 2022. Time is now 6:30 p.m. The New Jersey Open Meeting Law was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meetings of public bodies at which any business affecting their interest is discussed or agreed upon. In accordance with the provision of this Act, the Matawan Aberdeen Regional School District Board of Education advertised this meeting on June 7th, 2022 in the Asbury Park Press and the Star Ledger. This notice was sent to the municipal clerks of the Borough of Matawan and the Township of Aberdeen and the Matawan Aberdeen Public Library. The notice was also placed on the district's website. Can we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Case, can we please have roll call?
Mr. Einhorn?
Here.
Ms. Vilas? Here. Ms. Friedman? Here. Ms. Martinez? Here. Mr. Montone? Ms. Powell? Here. Ms. Osborne? Present. Mrs. Scully?
Here. Can I get a motion and a second to approve the correspondence to the board?
All motion.
Second.
Okay. With that, we'll move to the superintendent's report. First up, we have the state assessment presentation. Ms. Perez?
Good evening, everyone. Tonight I'm going to go over the 2022 district assessments, our results, and I'm going to share some comparisons with the state averages as well. Sorry. All right. Yeah. Okay. So first of all, for tonight, we'll gain an understanding of the state assessments, where we were before COVID, which everyone, I'm sure we know, that there was some regression, some positives that I'll share definitely tonight. How our students perform prior and post-pandemic. We'll learn how our students perform in comparison with the state average and the district supports that we have in place to maximize learning with curriculum and instructional practices as well as student supports. Okay. So we're going to review the MJSLA today, DLM, which is the dynamic learning maps, and the access as well for ELS. And we will also, for MJSLA, it'll be language arts, math, and science. Some of the comparisons for this year. I apologize, there's something wrong. So some of the research that that is out there, we all know that they published some news in October of 2022, which was just last month, that there was a significant decline in reading and also in math, particularly for grades 4 and 8th grade. The research utilized a national assessment, so not every state participated in that. In New Jersey, there were a few schools were selected for that particular administration. There were some schools in New Jersey that participated. We actually participated in that study for 8th grade this year. But prior to that, the study that was out there for the year prior, we did not participate in that. So and the selection is determined by the Department of Education. So what the research is showing us is really that they, like I mentioned, the reading and the math scores, which there was actually a larger decrease in scores across the board in math, which usually everyone was really worried about reading and fluency and comprehension, but actually it was math, so which was a little surprising. And the other is, and which we did know already, that students of low income or students who have an IEP, 504, or are in that group of special programs, they struggled significantly. So this slide here is showing us the NJSLA for language arts for level 1 through, and your own parents are receiving the scores, level 1 through 5. What I have on here, and then I want to share, I highlighted in yellow, the district assessments where we score, the district percentages, and then we have the state assessments as well. So overall, we perform better than the state average. So if you look at 4 and 5, What's highlighted in yellow, for example, on level 4 in third grade, we were at 44%. The state average was at 36. Okay? So when you look at level 1, just so everyone understands, when you're looking at level 1 and level 2, you want to be below actually the state average in that respect. So that's showing that our students are performing at a higher rate on level 3 through 5. Where you want to be is at the approaching, not at the approaching, you want to be at the meeting and the exceeding. So sometimes it's a little hard to read it because you look at it and you're like, well, why are we so, like for level 1, when you first read it, if you don't know how to read this data, you're looking like it's 8% versus 20%, that's really bad. It's actually good. So in those particular.
Why is that good?
Because level 1 means that they're just approaching, they're not meeting the state standards. Level 1 and 2.
Oh, so it's like,
Yeah.
Below norm.
It's below.
oh, yeah.
The more you have in level 4 and 5, the
Yes.
better, the better the students are
Yes.
doing. So you want the fewer students at level 1.
Correct.
And level 3 is average.
Yes. And that's with any of the testing that the students took. So, for example, access is the same way. Level 1, you don't want a lot of students in level 1. You want them at those higher levels.
I see. Thank you.
So here for language arts, this is showing some data from 2016 all the way through up to 22. You'll see here that it's each year, what I want to point out, each year it is different students. So what that means is that in 2016, that 66% for third grade. In 2017, you would see how they're performing. If you want to follow a certain group, that it's 64% in grade 4. So it goes down through the diagram. I don't have a clicker, so I can't highlight. Sorry. And then there's what you see from this slide is that there's growth in 3, 4, and 5 when comparing 2019 and 20. And then all grades above all, you see that there's that 57%. That's where the dip was, and that was after the pandemic and after. So here's math. Again, it's the same slide. It's a different slide, but now math. Same thing. Overall, we performed better than the state percentages. So again, level 4 and 5, we were at 41% grade 3, 14 again in comparison to 33% at state average, and then 14 for level 5 and 13 for level 5. So what on this slide, what's really interesting is actually algebra 1. So that was 32% for state, and 40% of our students scored above, 40% across the district scored above, which is great. When you look at there's another slide just showing you some historical data, again, from 2016 all the way through 2022. Again, each year is different students. There's some growth in Algebra 1 when comparing it through 2019 and 22. Particularly in middle school, and then again a dip from 2019 to 20. So this is, I realize it's a little blurry, I can fix it, but in terms of science, so overall we perform better than the state percentages again. So you'll see, again, looking over through proficient and advanced, which was really, really great because a lot of students who took the science, my daughter being one of them, did not take this science assessment very, very seriously because they did lose a lot of time, while we were during school closures, and then science, we all know that doing that virtually when the instruction made us that. So this was we were happy with this. So for science in grades 5, 8, 5th grade, 8th grade, and 11th grade. That's who took the sciences. For language arts, this is the same students consecutive years. So you see that there was some nice growth here between 2018 and 19, and then again you see a dip, and then same here, a big dip here for 19. So In terms of what we're going to get into in the next few slides is really looking at students by race and also by program. So that would be, the programs would be if the student has a 504, free and reduced lunch, IEPs, and RL population. So here, I'm going to go to the next one.
Ms. Perez, can you just tell everyone ELL?
English language learned. So on this graph, what it's showing us from 2015-16, that school year, all the way through 21-22, you'll see across the board, the darkest purple, in comparison to the lighter purple from 2018-19, there was a dip across the board. So when we look at white, multiple races, Hispanic, Black, and Asian. There was actually we had some steady growth, particularly like with the Hispanics in 2017-18, and then going into 18-19, same thing with the multiple races, and then you see that dip. So what you really want to see is that it's going up in terms of proficiency, and you don't have dips, obviously, but unfortunately, with everything with the pandemic, there was that slight dip there. So for language arts, meaning and exceeding, again, you'll see this, what's great about the slide is how we were more proficient across the board in all of our programs, specialized populations, and then unfortunately you do see the dip in that last year, 21-22. But again, while we're seeing a dip in our district in comparison to the state, we were better performing in terms of performance. This is for math, similar slide, students improving up to 17-18, and then there's that dip again in 2021. Okay.
Is this something that our DEI person is going to be looking
That's
at?
what we're gonna have that.
Doing the deep dive?
Yes.
And all the other good stuff?
Okay. So at the end, I have all the things that we're doing now and what we're moving forward with. And what I want to say too is, and we talked as a team that there's two things. So we weren't surprised as a district as far as with where our students were performing with this, with the 21-22 administration when we got the scores, because it was really aligned nicely with the benchmarks that we did throughout the year. So even though, so for 19-20, we may not have performed all 3 benchmark assessments, but as we were starting to come back to school, we administered benchmarks to our kids just to get that, to see where they were at. And then that's how we developed our summer programming for that summer. So going into 21-22, we already had, or even 2021, we already had the data and we knew where we could make some changes with instruction, where we could change virtually, the kids were still virtual at that time, and then 21-22, we had all that information, and then we were able to change some practices. The other key piece is that last year we were in year 1 for MyView, which is the literacy program that the board approved last year. So all of those assessments it's called iReady, it's a diagnostic. Those reading scores were aligned with what we saw. Okay, so here, I went over these, but this is basically, so here, this was math, I just want to make sure, so you saw the mean and exceeding the percentages there. And again, we still had some nice growth through the years, and then there was that slight growth. So for us, what's going to be really, really important is making sure that we're on the upward, right? The kids are improving. Our baseline data we have already, we're getting ready for the second administration for our benchmark data, so we'll be able to see that. What I did share with Dr. Mike and the team is that we would like to share that data with the board and the community, so then this way they see really where kids came in September even now, and then share that information and where they are with those scores as well, because that will help us out. Here, this is by, sorry. It's a different mouse, so let me just review that. Here's our science we talked about. Again, on this slide, it's not very clear, but you'll see that where the red is where students were minimal, so across the board, this is our district data, even though, like I mentioned, that we scored fairly well across in comparison with state averages. For us, obviously, there were a lot of students that, by subgroup, that did not perform well on the science assessment. And then, because the green should be a lot, that bar should be a lot higher. The L's you do not see very much there, because there are certain, those particular students, because of the cohort, the grades levels that we have, it might not have provided us that, the percentage that we needed.
Could you just discuss quickly the ELL students we're getting as port of entry as opposed to already being here? Okay.
So, fun fact for Maryland, we have 39 different languages spoken in our community. 39. So our highest is Spanish. We have a huge Russian population. We had a lot of students come this year from Ukraine, South American countries. From India, all over, which is, I think, we all think that that's beautiful. In terms of the students when they're coming, or eventually what Dr. Mike is mentioning is that some students may not have any language at all. When students register, then we have to administer a screener to determine if they warrant any ESL services or language supports, is what we call them. Those particular students, we come up with learning plans, and the ESL teacher works closely with the actual homeroom teacher. So grades K to 3, they get ESL support. Lloyd Road gets high intensity ESL, which what that means is that those students are not participating, and they're not participating in their language arts block, and they are actually with the ESL teacher the entire time, so a full 90-minute block or 120 minutes. They're there with working with their ESL teachers, and same thing with Madison High School.
Sorry, I raised my hand. The standardized tests, the ones that NJ, SLA, are those given in a person's first language, if that is really what they primarily speak, or are people who don't have a great handle on English taking a science standardized exam in English?
They're taking in English. There's some exceptions, like if it's port of entry, there are some possible exceptions for those particular students, only depending on when they started the U.S. school.
So they
started in September, and they're here day one, they're taking that test.
So had they taken it in their native language, they could have been off the charts.
Yeah, they would have to be fluent in their native language, especially science. Yeah.
Well, that's what I was thinking.
Which though, a lot of them aren't. So it compounds the issue. So, for instance, at Lloyd Road, I have observed a class, an ELL class, where there is 4 children around a table getting individualized instruction. They all speak different languages. And this literally all going on at the same time, and you can sit there and watch in amazement how they're learning to communicate, how they're learning off of each other. It's something to see.
And depending on the country that they come from, you can see what we call students with interrupted formal education is what we would say. So if they left their country and they're in a refugee, but they were in school, and then they were in refugee for a few months or however long, and then when they got to somewhere, they didn't register, like that's that interrupted education. So we are very, very careful when we look at their transcripts in terms of where we're placing students. We can't leave them further behind, like, even with their birthday, they still have to be placed according to their grade level, unless in communication with the parent that they, that, okay, it's a little, there's no education at all, and if the parent's in agreement, then we may, kind of keep them back and say first grade, we have to start first grade when they're supposed to be second. So which has helped us. We also administered the New Jersey Graduation Proficiency Assessment, which the seniors were super, super excited to take. To juniors, they're now seniors. So here, again, I think it's great that the students, even though they didn't want to take the test, again, we were above state averages. I mean, it's beautiful that 58% in language arts, 39 in comparison to 39%. For the state and math, it was 63% and 50% for the state. And so the overall, again, 60% and the state average was 48%. So here, this is broken down by race in terms of student achievement levels with this particular score for our district. So our Hispanic family, our Hispanic students, they're 50%, I think it says up there, not passing and 50% passing, which when you look at this group here, there could be L's in here as well. So, and like I mentioned, there's our highest percentages in Spanish. And then here, our white population of students fared really well across the board. Same thing with multiple and black. So this here is just showing you just a different way of looking at it. The district level assessments are up top, and at the bottom that's the state. Again, so we look good. So again, this is not an assessment that the seniors really, some of them did not take it serious. So we're going to get into the English language learners assessment, which is called the WIDA Access. So, this actually understanding the WIDA is important because we're really measuring their language proficiency, where they are with understanding and learning the English language. They have to take this test online. So, which is very, very difficult for our students when we're talking about our year one students, our port of entry students. They have never been exposed to a laptop and to take that test. What's great about this for us, for instructional purposes, is that it does allow us to, identify the levels that where they are in terms of proficiency for English. And also it drives that instruction. We can see some measurables from those assessments. So again, similar to NJSLA, level 1 is entering, and up to level 6, which is reaching. When they're here, 5 and 6, the students are exiting. They're not getting much support other than, they're still in contact with their ESL teacher, etc. So as a support, but they're usually not getting any ESL supports at that point. The entering, any of our port of entry students, they're falling in here, entering and beginning. Very rarely will you see them even at level 3, which is development. So this, how is it measured and what does it measure? It's measuring your overall listening skills, speaking skills, reading and writing, and then your overall, when we look at we look at oral language, literacy, and comprehension, and then it gives you an overall composite. It's easier to read this. So grades K to 5, a little funky chart. So no one scored in the reaching or at this point, but at the bridging, you see that percentage is up there at the very top. What you want to see is that you want to see larger bars in that yellow and green, so year to year. So your percentage from 2021 to 21-22 that bar is moving across. So you see, okay, 34% in 21-22. However, the increase in the green to 32%, which is at the expanded level. And that's what we want to do. Yep. Yes.
I guess I'm confused, but maybe I'm jumping ahead, that how can, like, there's more than one thing that could be causing a change there. I mean, I don't know, is the point of this to look at how this remote learning affected this, or is it
Well,
just a general look at this?
So actually for
Immigration.
for the ELS, they actually, if you look at the dates, they were responsible to take this in the spring of 2021 when NJSLA, but so we have the scores. What you're looking, I guess your question is how are we looking for growth is really what we're looking for. You're going to always see, here with this particular assessment, you're always going to see an increase. The kids never, well, in my experience, they've never plateaued here.
Oh, this is the same cohort?
Yes.
Oh, okay, that's what was confusing me. All right. Never mind.
So then, then this is broken down to grades 6 through 8. The bulk of the kids, the bulk of our students are in our elementary building. It's K to 5. Most recently, we have probably our highest number right now in past years at middle school and high school. And again, it's those 498. But, so I do want to point that out. In grades 6 through 8, on this particular slide, again, you see that the bars are narrowing year to year in those developing and emerging levels. 9 through 12, this is broken out the same, which is this year is very, this is nice, here 28% there, and the students are moving as well. This is your high school totals. This just kind of get, well, not high school, across the board, our elementary school, middle school, high school, and all grades. So again, we have some steady growth there as well, even with some of, the school closures, the students are still improving. It's the same slide as this, just a different format. This year, this is the composite scores that I shared with you earlier that through those domains, they're adding the scores up, and you get a composite score. The scores range from 1.0 all the way through 6.0. So across the board, all grades were at a 3.5. To exit ESL or the programming state requirement, 4.5 is when you exit. So those kids, you see some really nice growth. The bars are going up across the board. So we will have some exiting students at this stage. So some of our special ed students participated in the dynamic learning labs, which is called the BOE. The assessments were conducted in 2022 in the areas of language arts, math, and science. This is in person only, and at that time, it was, the kids are not on the computer, it's something materials collected. The teachers are uploading information to the platform. The testing window was in April through May 27th for grades 3, 8, and 11. They were instructed in terms of what they were measuring was the essential elements and content standards. So the teachers teach that throughout the year. They receive, this is for students who require individualized instruction. So we're talking about our students primarily in our self-contained programs, our autistic population, students placed in a multiply disabled population. So if they do not, students, what's important, because sometimes we get a lot of questions from parents, well, why can't my student has an IEP, why can't my student take the alternate assessment, the DLM, as opposed to the NJSLA? It is all based on their intellectual ability or disability, so it is, you have to have your certain criteria, and it also is where students are currently placed and what they're being taught. So obviously, the students in the self-contained program, particularly in those, they're very intense in terms of focusing on sometimes whether it's social skills, we use applied behavioral analysis in those classrooms. It's a very, very different instructional methodology that's used in there. They're not exposed to necessarily core content standards every day. It's scaffolded to their specific levels. So similar to the other assessments, these are the levels that we're looking for: emerging, approaching target, target, and advanced. For language arts, 28 students participated in assessments for 2022. In 2021, it was 27. You see some nice, there's 36 students that were in emerging, 32 students in approaching last year, and 32 students at targeted or advanced. For math, we had same number of students participated in the assessment. We had 39 students at emerging, 25 students at approaching, and 36 students at targeted or advanced. For us, the big jump was here. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some of the supports that we have I mentioned the language arts, the language MyView. We're continuing, we're in year 2, we're continuing with coaching and professional development in all the schools. That program is offered K-5. Math, we started utilizing year 1, we're in year 1 right now, Ready Math. So that was a big shift. So we feel that and that was something that was piloted pre-COVID in some of the classrooms. The committee was formed, they basically voted, and everybody was in agreement that that was the program that was to be selected. We moved from everyday math to that program. Both programs have special, they have a lot of scaffolds or supports for our targeted or at-risk students. So like for our special ed population, our ELL students, and what that really means is that if the teacher could really can have a whole group lesson, and then she might have to do something a little bit different with students that may be struggling, and then they'll give them some frameworks on what to do with those particular students. So like I mentioned, in terms of the benchmark assessments from our new program last year, there's definitely been some great growth with reading and literacy across the board. Someone mentioned the DEI position and what they will be working, how will this help here. He's looked at the data. Dr. Rawls, the team helped in terms of putting the PowerPoint together. So he's identified those areas. He will be meeting with the principals, setting up data meetings and taking a deeper dive in terms of seeing, okay, where are we, what is their disproportionality, what's happening, and how can we address those learners, and what supports do they need. The other key piece is making sure, like when we talk about literacy, that there are also books in the classroom that students are relating to, and that because that also, we know that research shows that if students can pick up a book that they love and they're really into, they're going to gravitate and they'll find a love for reading. Right? So making sure that we have specific authors for them. Our equipment along the lines with professional development. Not only is the coaching taking place, but professional development. Staff are going to get certified with Wilson, which is to provide intensive reading instruction for particular identified students. Also, Orton Gillingham, our multi-tiered supports. We've made some changes in terms of identifying students. The supervisors that were hired last year, they've been reviewing the data, so everyone's aware of what the data and what we need to do. So particularly for those supervisors, they're meeting with the interventionists. And they are identifying students that need help, which students don't need so much support, how do we decrease supports and maximize their time effectively. At Lloyd Road, they started, Mr. Brogue is here, so thanks to him and the team there, we implemented a math lab at Lloyd Road, which we now then implemented at the grade level, at the elementary levels as well. And so what that is additional time to get some math support, because we see the data, right? And we know that our students are struggling in math. So it's, you do, well, we're language arts, we're getting better, and so we do need to get better in math as well.
I'm sorry. I wanted to point something out that might be lost on some people here, with the exception of maybe Tara, who's been here as long as I have. But I remember looking at these and being fully aghast at the huge discrepancy between some of the minorities. And although there's still a significant gap that is unpleasing, it is significantly more improved than it has been since I got here. So I thought that should definitely be acknowledged, because I know when I first got here, the only sort of outside resource, was, I think, the most program that was run out of, from a pastor in Clifton. And I remember being here, this is before Dr. Micah got here, where the funding, the superintendent cut off the funding for that program. So it's, great to see that that program's up and running again, but also to see the strides that the district has made over time. So I just wanted to point that out, at least from my perspective, because I appreciate the long haul.
We see the growth, but, we know we don't know we can get better. To support in terms of, constantly discussing, okay, how are we going to address this particular population? What can we do instructionally? How can we support the staff? How can we utilize their time better? So it's nice to see. I'm looking forward to next year, like sitting up here and presenting to show, where we are and some of the improvements that we make as well. In terms of professional development, so for our English language learners, in terms of the targeted professional development that we do, is we offer our sheltered English instruction. So there's two trainers. We did a trainer a few years ago, so we have 2 staff members that do that with staff. They're actually doing something at the high school next year because we had so many new entrants. We have a training tomorrow, actually, with some of the staff, because the students are struggling, in science. And so that's really hard for our new guys coming here. So we do offer that as well, and like I mentioned, that we have learning plans for specific students for the staff to work with the ESL teachers as well.
I just want to make one comment that I think is extremely important. We show comparisons to the state averages, and clearly we're above those state averages. I don't want anyone to think that that's what our floor is, right? Our floor is, striving for the best that we can do. So those are just comparisons, because that's what we get compared to is the state averages. But by no stretch of the imagination is that a place that we look to stop, so to speak. I want everybody to understand that, and I'm extremely clear with that.
And so each of the teachers, the students' teachers, have access to this information, and they can really do a deep dive into what each student, where they may be lacking or need the extra support, because there's support during the day as well as potentially after school as well for them,
Yes.
that they can recommend to the parents. Okay.
They've received their data, so they use their, not necessarily this assessment, they have this assessment now, but they use their baseline data back when we were doing our baseline data in September. And then once they had that, they also had historical data too. We use, it's linked in, it's a warehouse, a data warehouse basically. So the teachers have all access to that. With our new programs, like iReady, that's a supplemental program for language arts. When we do that diagnostic, it actually gives the staff, we added, it's like a teacher toolbox that we purchased for those staff members to utilize. So if a student is really struggling, it tells them, okay, this is what you can do. These are some practices. If you're not doing this, try this. So we say, like, if the student is here, then let's try this with that particular student. So it's laid out. A lot of supports there.
And then you said a follow-up presentation maybe in the spring?
Yeah,
essentially?
probably earlier.
Okay.
Probably earlier. Just with our district data, like our benchmark assessments,
okay.
where we started in September and then where we're
Just to
going.
see how we're tracking.
I anticipate February for that.
Mr. President, can I just ask you, with all the different languages, how do we handle that? Like, so somebody comes in with a language that we're really new to us, how does that even, where do you begin with that?
So the kids are great. They use their Google, they're using their translators. You know, they have their dictionaries, so they're using all that information. When they're at that level of two, so like for writing, if they don't have the language, then those staff members, the ESL teachers, will have them draw out whatever they're thinking. So, which, you know, middle school, high school, a lot of those guys don't want to do, but they do find that we're finding other ways to communicate something, because, you know, we want them to learn. So then, based off of what they're thinking, their thought processes, then they move from a drawing into writing. So it's really nice to see that.
So, Ms. Martinez, if you think about it this way, just think about it the reverse. It doesn't matter who's around that table. They're all there to learn English. So
Right.
they're all bringing their different language to the table, but that teacher might not know any other language.
Right, exactly.
You know, I sat in, you know, and so I think about it the reverse.
Right, yeah.
So it's, they're drawn from that teacher. And if you want to see it, I think there's no better example than it would.
Because in
Just
my old school
fantastic.
thinking, I'm thinking that there needs to be
And
a
repeat.
teacher for each language.
No.
But I forget, you know, Google Translate, I'm like, you know.
So just think about it the
I'm old,
opposite.
wasn't I?
Those
But, yeah.
6 different languages around the table, they're learning English. It's not as if we're trying to teach 6 different languages.
Right.
Yeah.
What we do though, from kindergarten all the way through, is that we find a friend.
Yeah.
Right? So, you know, we find someone that either maybe even exited, that's like the best scenario, like for the kids to boost their confidence, like they see somebody achieve that was in ESL and now they're out. And so we pair them up, and so we make sure, like even in social settings, like with lunch and recess, like we try and pair them together, and so they can feel comfortable in their new setting. And the parents are great too. They come in with translators, so if they don't know, we experience that a lot of the parents know English, actually a little bit more than the student, but yeah, the reading, for them, it's the real struggle is the reading. Math, and I didn't highlight it, but for math, our L population scored, you know, it was really in comparison with every other group. And that's because there isn't a lot of reading in math unless it's a word problem or something like that. But the numbers, they're great with numbers.
Well, just kudos to us, but a friend of mine's nephew is from Brazil, and he came in May, and he had 0 English. And now he's just, so that they found him a friend in the high school. So he paired up, and then now he's like, you just speak to him in English. It's amazing in only a few months how much he has picked up. It's really good to see. Yeah.
So we're going to post this on the website as well, and then I'll share it also. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, we have the HIP reporting, Mr. Linden.
Thank you, good evening. Mrs. Scully, we're going to hold off on that presentation until
Okay.
the RAM.
Okay, and that brings it to me. So I hope you all enjoyed your fall break. It was much needed, I think, for everyone, and hopefully everyone is back and refreshed. Wanted to say congratulations to the newly elected board members. Welcome. The reorg meeting for the swearing in is scheduled for Tuesday, January 3rd, and that'll be here at Cambridge at 7 p.m. We'll forward more information as it gets closer. Just a reminder, the market period ends this Friday. If you have any questions, you could either reach out to your child's teacher or check the Genesis portal. Report cards will be posted on December 1st. The high school is hosting its Husky Experience this Wednesday evening for current 7th and 8th grade students. And that's really where the students can come in and learn more about the high school, the academies, the sports, the clubs, talk to other students. It's a really great experience, so if you have a 7th or 8th grader, I recommend registering on the school website. Let's see. Several of the schools within our district are hosting food drives to support the local families in district that are in need during the holidays. So you can check out on the Lloyd Road, MAMS, and the high school pages. There's information if you'd like to donate to that. Just a reminder again, we've said this before, the Borough of Matawan is distributing free meals at Town Hall on Friday nights through December. And on behalf of the board, I'd like to wish everyone a very happy Thanksgiving. So we'll be after that when we come back to the next meeting. And with that, we're going to move on to curriculum and instruction. Ms. Perez?
Thank you. Under curriculum instruction, we have a few action items. We're asking for board approval under A, B, and there should be a walk-in item. B, other, number 3. Those are action items. Under item number 2, we're asking for board approval for the change in the school improvement individuals for the panel. We added Mr. Sean Cronin down there. That concludes curriculum instruction.
Thank you. Can I get a motion and a second to approve the agenda?
So moved.
I'll second.
Student Services, Ms. Perez?
Under student services, we're asking for board approval, action items 1, 2, 3, and 4, and that concludes student services.
Can I get a motion and a second to approve the agenda?
Motion.
Second.
Personnel, Mr. Lehman?
Thank you. We do have action items this evening. We're asking the board to approve items 1 and 2, so that's for action. And then we're asking the board to consider for approval at the RAM, items A, B, C 1 through 7, and D 1 through 4. That concludes personnel.
Thank you. Can I get a motion and a second to approve the agenda?
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay. Policy, Mr. Lehman?
Under policy, we're recommending the board to approve and adopt second reading of policy 5512. That's for second reading and adoption. Mrs. Scully, there are a couple of questions from board members I could address in terms of how do we communicate the new policy to the community and to parents. So there's a couple of things that have happened and currently are happening. We've trained our school counselors who are anti-bullying specialists on the new policy. Mr. Rubin did that presentation for them a couple weeks ago. He's going to do the same presentation for our principals in December. And that way, the anti-bullying specialists and the principals can communicate that out. The parents, principals will be able to share this information in their newsletters. Mr. Rubin has also provided for us to share with principals and the community the language, kind of simplified on what the changes were specifically to the policy, so they can see bite-sized information. And then the superintendent can also share out those particular changes in that language in our next community letter. That includes policy.
And I know a few board members have expressed interest in having it be shared out as broadly as possible with the community because I think it is really important the anti-bullying policy because it's really taken a step forward. I think it's much stronger and there's a lot more ramifications if you do bully or harass other students. So I think we've come a long way with it and I'm pretty happy with it.
Just to add, our next committee letter will go out prior to the holiday next week, so either Tuesday, Wednesday, or Wednesday. So it'll all be included in that letter.
Finance, Ms. Case? Oh, wait, sorry, motion and a second to approve policy.
So moved.
I'll second.
Finance, Ms. Case?
We'll be looking to take action on number 1, and the rest will be for action items on the 28th, 2 through 13.
Can I get a motion and a second to approve the agenda?
I'll motion. I'll second.
Okay, any questions or comments from the board on agenda items? Ms. Bell?
Yes, on curriculum instruction, I Item B, especially because it's for action, this is the most nitpicky, silly thing, but I think we have the wrong year on here. And same thing in number 2.
Oh, we do, yes.
Yeah, it's 2022.
We'll fix
It's
that.
not because my son's going there tomorrow. That's definitely tomorrow.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mrs. Foley?
So,
Yes. I just wanted to mention, I appreciate you talking about the HIP, because I've been asking, or I had mentioned, once we pass it, I just feel if it's possible, when we do share that information, I like how we did the new health information, just pulling out what's new versus, because, I feel like there's parent responsibility a little, which is a little different. And so that, I feel like they need to be aware of that. And sometimes all that gets lost because there's so much wording. So that would be great if we could just bullet that.
Absolutely.
Mrs. Scully?
Yes.
I'm over here. There was a board question in terms of enrollment for preschool. What can we anticipate for next year? We are close to our universe. We will have 400, and we're projecting 430 students. Our universe is 407.
And so that's an increase of about 100 students next year.
Which surpasses the state expectations. So we're actually a couple of years ahead
But they still fund us for where we're at.
Yes,
with what we have, yes.
Just making sure.
Yes.
that's why
yes,
they're asking for projections.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
I just didn't want to get too,
Oh, no.
no need to run ahead. We don't have to.
Any other questions or comments from the board on the agenda items? Okay. Then we're going to move to public comments on agenda items and additional matters. The Board of Education recognizes the value of public comment on matters of interest to the school community. Individuals wishing to speak must state their name and municipality of residence. Comments are limited to 3 minutes duration, but an individual may speak a second time after all others who wish to speak on the topic have been heard. All statements should be directed to the board president. A new participant may address or question board members individually. All speakers are requested to express themselves in a civil manner with due respect for the dignity and privacy of others whose legal rights may be affected. Please note, while it is not the board's intention to stifle comment on matters of legitimate concern, the public should be aware that if their statements violate the rights of others under the law of defamation or invasion of privacy, they may face personal liability to the injured party. If speakers are uncertain of the legal ramifications of their comments, the board urges them to seek guidance beforehand from their own legal advisor. Any public comments? Mr. Baroka?
Casey Barolka, 19 in Lay Lane, Farmingdale, New Jersey. I just had a question about the board policy, the update to the HIV policy. Was that policy, I know Strauss Esme writes a lot of the policies, how much of that policy was tailored for our district versus what was provided? If you could speak on that. And then the second question is it possible, because this is a very lengthy policy, this one is many, many pages. I know some are shorter than others, but is it possible in the future to get like an amended version of the policy? So for example, you leave the original there, but then include the updated language of what you want, so it's kind of easier, I don't want to say to skim the policy, but to be able to see kind of quickly what the changes are to the policy. So for example, instead of trying to take the old policy and have it here and the new one here and read and read and read and read to compare the differences, just to have like an amended version as you go.
So key differences.
I don't want to make any, extra work for anybody. If it's too much, then so be it.
So, let me speak to your first question about how much changes were Strauss Esme. So Strauss Esme is our policy writers and policy attorneys versus how much was board input. So the Strauss Esme changes reflect what was recommended by the state of New Jersey, Governor Murphy's office, and the Department of Education. However, our board is extremely active when it comes to policy writing. So this policy specifically, there were many changes that the board gave input that went above and beyond established Strauss Esme. So quite a bit. Then in terms of how much we can share from edited policies to second read and final draft policies, so I think this would be a question for Mr. Rubin when he's here at the ramp, so we can definitely ask him his input on how much the board can share in between first read and second read.
Thank you.
And just to give an example too, sorry, in terms of changes that were made, I think we really tried to tailor it for our district, and I think everybody up here really finds this so incredibly important. So like, for example, one of the Strauss estimating things was to, after 3 incidents, 3 founded incidents, they would have to be put on a plan. So, I even had asked was, if there are 3 unfounded incidents, potentially, like if we see there's a pattern, even if they're not founded, we should still be investigating it, and potentially there might be a need for a plan because there might be something else going on. So don't just drop it if it's not founded, type of thing. Okay. Any other public comments? Okay. Then we are going to take action on agenda items. Curriculum and instruction, A and B1 and B3. Student services 1 through 4. Personnel 1 through 2. Policy second read, and finance number 1.
Mr. Riker?
Yes.
Ms. Silas?
Yes.
Ms. Friedman?
Yes.
Ms. Martinez?
Yes.
Ms. Bell?
Yes.
Ms. Osborne?
Abstain from curriculum instruction A and B1, yes, the others.
So noted. Mrs. Scully?
Yes. Okay, any old business? Any new business?
So, comment?
Sure.
Just want to say thank you to the board. I know Ms. Janice is not here, but our Assistant Superintendent Nellie for the invite to the Latin Awards. We had a great time, right? We had a great time. The awards were amazing. Just to see the accomplishments and the volunteering, all the hard work that went into it. It was beautiful, and we actually got to enjoy some dancing, great music, good food, and yeah, it was nice. It was great to be a part of that. Also, because I wasn't here at the last meeting, but we had also a great time at the School Board Association. We were in attendance. A lot of us went down there. We had a great time. We were together. We were unified as a team. The dinners were great. Yeah, hospitality was great. And the seminars were great. We got a lot of steps in every day walking. But they were great and informative. The vendors were great. So it was a great experience. It was my first time being there, and it was a great experience. So thank you to the district for that.
I just have one thing to end on. Mrs. Scully, as you mentioned before, making a community effort to help people out through these holidays. I want to thank our staff and Nellie and Mike for we've begun and Lindsay, we've begun a program called MARSD Cares, and our staff stepped to the plate the last week to raise thousands of dollars to be able to help through the holiday season for the families that otherwise would not have certain things. So it's extremely humbling to me to see us all come together for a cause like that. And so I just want to thank the staff and those people that made it possible.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move to executive session. Be it resolved that a closed session be convened for the purposes of discussing privacy, personnel, and attorney-client matters. The subject matter of these discussions will be disclosed to the public when the reason for confidentiality subsides. Although the board cannot guarantee it, the length of the executive session is estimated to be 15 minutes, after which the public meeting of the board shall reconvene and proceed with business. Action will not take place. Can I get a motion and a second to enter executive session?
Motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.